Want to give a quick orientation to the Finances tab. This is probably the most complicated tab and one that people have lots of questions about. The first thing I'd like to draw your attention to is if this row number 2 says don't start this yet, that's for your own good. Please don't start it because that indicates that something is still incomplete on the Contact and Entities tab. And if this is incomplete in any kind of way, that's going to really cause problems on this tab and is going to create a lot of rework and wasted time. So wait until the Contact and Entities tab is completely done before moving on to complete this tab. The first thing that I want to draw your attention to is this categorization of each country. Once the tab is ready to go, there will be entities and countries listed in row number 2, and the categorization of those countries is going to be automatic, basically around the lines of countries that we consider to be developed versus countries that we consider to be developing. And the only metric, well, maybe not the only metric, but CG Charitable doesn't have very many metrics, but this is one of the few that for the global organization, all entities combined, we want there to be less than 25% of total spending inside of developed countries like the United States. We refer to these as supporting countries. We work really hard to make this metric as accurate as possible, and we encourage you to try and be really transparent. We do our best not to penalize organizations for having something that's out of spec, so to speak, with this metric, but if we uncover that something's being misrepresented or manipulated in some way to try and fit inside of our preferred boundaries, that's going to become a cause to not fund the organization. So 2 guiding principles in trying to determine which country spending should occur under is the physical reality. There are some cases where employees, for example, get paid in one country when they're actually working and living in another country. And there's good reasons for that, but we care about the physical reality. Where does this person live? Where does this person work? And so please have the reporting of people and their compensation align with physical reality. And that's true kind of across the board with assets and all other things. There might be entities in the United States that own assets abroad, but we want those assets to be reported in the physical location where they reside, not necessarily where they exist on a financial statement. Other things to consider for this tab that might be not very intuitive: fractional headcount is a concept that a lot of people outside of finance or HR might not be familiar with, but this tries to account for the fact that not everybody's a full-time employee. There are part-time employees, and you can read the notes for all of these things to get a better idea of what we mean by fractional headcount for each of these categories. And then we kind of ask the same question 3 different ways. We want to know about the fractional headcount, but then we want to know about how many full-time, part-time, and volunteer employees there are in the country. And that number should actually be the same as the people by category. And so we want row 25 here and row 39 to actually report the same number. They're just split up different ways. We do the same thing with assets. We can report assets by what kind of asset it is, but then it's also important for us to understand how restricted those assets are. And so these numbers ought to be the same. Revenue, very similar. At least for financial revenue, we want the financial revenue to be the same for each of these sections, but we're splitting up the revenue different ways. And we encourage you to work closely with your CG Charitable contact if you have questions about how to split any of these things up. And for some kinds of finances, we ask you to provide some explanations, give us a little bit more detail about what's going on, such as in-kind revenue, or if you're getting government grants. We try to itemize these explanations clearly. These columns that right now look gray give you an indicator of whether something is complete or whether there's a problem. It'll turn pink if there's a problem. So use those as a guide. And again, there's notes all over the place. If you just hover over one of the cells, it'll give you a little bit more direction. And we would fill this tab out for you if we felt like we could, but that's generally not possible. And so we appreciate you working with us to get this information as correct as possible.